Annyeonghaseyo. Hi everyone, this is Ariel, one half of Soju for Two, and this is a movie review for Shanghai Calling. And I wanted to do this review since I saw it was coming out because it has Daniel Henney in it from My Lovely Samsoon, Spring Waltz, he was in Wolverine, a couple other American TV shows, so we love him. And this also has Eliza Coupe, who played Amanda. He played Sam. And then Bill Paxton plays Donald in this. So it's a movie, and I've been wanting to see it since I saw a long time ago. I saw some interview with Daniel Henney, and he was talking about this. Like, there was in production. I was like, oh, it sounds good. But now I got to rent it when I was on the airplane going to Vegas, and finally got to watch it, and then immediately bought it. So I haven't been able to find it anywhere online. It might be on Netflix or something, but I rented it and then bought it on iTunes, which is not really smart. I wasted money. I should have just bought it right away. And yeah, so it was, I don't know if I've seen it is iTunes, but if you're back home, we probably have it in like Blockbuster, things like that, but obviously I can't go there. So it isn't on Drama Crazy or any of the usual sites. And it's interesting about this, first of all, it's set in Shanghai, obviously, so it's not Korean. And I guess the thing about, for me, that was exciting about this was that it was the first thing I've seen in a long time that deals with a foreigner, you know, coming to Asia and their story. Because I feel like, as someone that loves Korean shows and Taiwanese shows and Japanese shows, and maybe I'd like a lot more mainland China shows if I started watching them, I just haven't, I always want to have that character that's like me, you know, the foreigner coming. So this was one of those great things where there's a foreigner and I get to relate to that character, even though it's a male character. So I was really excited about this plot, and it's something that I hope continues. I would love to see this as a Korean version or something else, because I love the idea of this plot. And the plot is, you have a sort of egotistical, very charming lawyer comes from New York, and he moves to Shanghai for a few months to sort of, you know, get all this business acquisitions done, and you know, he obviously in the process gets in touch with his Chinese heritage, things like that. So it was very interesting to me, the whole plot of this story, and it was something a little bit fresh, something a little bit different that we haven't seen before, even though the storyline is something we've seen before. And I apologize for how bright it is, just that this is the only time I could make the video, and it's like, I'm glowing. Yeah, so there's a lot of things that I loved about this movie, but especially I think there were tons of issues of, like, you know, culture shock that were addressed in a way that really happened and are really authentic. And I really liked that. I was surprised at how good this movie was at doing that. So obviously the people really did the research, or had been, you know, expats or, you know, immigrants into an Asian culture, so they could sort of understand that. So I did a few things that were just like amazingly funny to me. So there's an English teacher character who's teaching English in China, and he, I think, is like obviously a caricature of a lot of English teachers here, but I totally see people like that. You know, he has this like idea, he's come to this country, and he doesn't see, his character at least doesn't seem to really care about teaching English. More or less he's come to, like, you know, meet the foreign girls, meet the local girls. And I mean, obviously I know that there are a lot of English teachers here that are genuine and that really want to do a great job and want to teach English. There are definitely guys like this sort of guy. So that is a huge reality, I think. And so I liked that they had that character. That was really authentic from my experience in Korea, even though it's two different countries, very similar experience. Yeah, so another thing I think is interesting is there's a scene when they go to, the two main characters go to lunch, and the Amanda character, she speaks Chinese, but Daniel Henney's character, Sam, doesn't speak Chinese, but he is Chinese American. So interestingly enough, every time they go, the people at the restaurant like speak, they look at him, even though he doesn't speak the language, and she's responding, but they never look at her. This scene is really great for me, because this happens to me a lot. A lot of my friends don't speak Korean very well, and even though I don't speak Korean very well, I understand Korean. So when I go somewhere, I understand what they're saying, and usually I'll be the one responding. But if I had friends that are Asian, not necessarily Korean, the waitress or whoever I'm with will always look at them first, assuming that they understand the language, and never ever look at me, and I'm the one who's responding. And this will happen, I'll be responding, but then they'll still look at the other person to ask the question. So this has happened to me multiple times. So that's something that I find really, really, that really felt authentic to me. Like, that happens quite frequently here for me in Korea. Another thing, there's a scene when they're sitting at a table, and it's just two of them at first, and then a lot of people sit at the table while they're eating. And at first, I wasn't sure what was going on. I was sort of thinking, oh, like, maybe this is like people that work with him or something. If you see the movie, you'll understand. But no, it's just like people here, there's no like sense like this is my table. It's like people share. And that is really authentic. And actually, one of my friends was telling me something like this happened the other day. Like, she was sitting at a table and she assumed that the person, like, wouldn't sit there because it was obviously her and her boyfriend. But that's not true. Like, here, people really, they never think, like, oh, you can't sit down if there's an extra seat. Like, you can always sit if there's an extra seat. So it is something really different, and we're not used to that, like, in sort of invasion of our personal space when we're eating. Another thing, okay, business card. So he like makes this like sort of his breakdown moment, and he's saying, oh, it's really hard to remember to like two hands with a business card, and you have to give your business card and all those things. And that's again another one of those like culture shock moments where if you don't know, and then when you find out, it's kind of like, oh, I wasn't doing that. I didn't know I was supposed to be doing that, and it definitely happens for all of us. Another one that happens in the movie that felt like great to me was like he gets in a taxi and he's a New Yorker, so he's used to taxis, but as a New Yorker, you kind of have this jaded feeling like people are always going to rip you off. And the taxi driver isn't trying to rip him off, but he thinks he is. And this is something that like I felt a lot when I got here because like as a New Yorker, you feel experienced with taxis. Like you know how taxis work. You know that when there's tourists, like they'll give the long route, things like that. But the funny thing is that like when I was in Vegas over the holiday, I totally had this moment where like the guy thought that I was a tourist and tries and added $3 extra onto the thing by pushing some random button, and I'm like, excuse me, like what is that? And he's like, oh, that's like an extra service fee. I'm like, well, that's not on the thing, and this right here says like all the surcharges and like the automatic fee. There's no additional fee, and he's like, oh, and he takes the $3 off. So like as a New Yorker, I'm skeptical about those things, but like apparently I'm right to be skeptical sometimes, because there is that like sense, I don't know, that people are going to take you for a ride, especially in America. We have that feeling that that's going to happen. And then this thing, like, obviously it isn't happening. In Korea, I feel like that rarely happens, but I do hear that happens sometimes. So, I don't know, I feel like as a New Yorker, you feel extra, like, you're afraid of getting scammed. Like, it's a possibility. So that was interesting for me. The construction. In this movie, another thing that happens a lot is there's constant construction. And, like, there's this, like, so someone says something like, China's going to be great when the construction's over. And I totally feel like Korea is the same way. Like, everywhere you go, there's constant construction, and they're always tearing down a building, putting up another one in a day, and you're like, how did this happen? And it's like, there's that constant sense of, like, changing the city. I think those are, like, all the big things that just sort of, like, stood out to me as being, like, great moments in this. And I guess talk a little bit about the plot. Like, there's obviously this story is a bit of a love story, but it's also sort of a story of, like, understanding one's heritage or coming to a new country and things like that, like, obviously are really inspiring for us. So I have to say, like, for me, this kind of movie is, like, amazing. I feel like it really understands my experience as a foreigner in an Asian culture, and even though, like, I don't live in Shanghai, like, there are these moments that things like this happen to me, exactly the same thing in Seoul, and I don't know, I really, really love this movie. There's a little bit of a love story, which of course we all like. Daniel Henney, I think, was really good in this. He was funny. He plays like that jerk character in the beginning that really turns around. And I don't know, I felt like this was one of those movies where it had literally everything I wanted and a lot more. Like, I was expecting there was a movie a little while ago about someone that like moved to India and was working at like a phone bank sort of situation called like On the Line or something. And I remember thinking, like, oh, that was a cute movie, but it doesn't really quite understand what I'm feeling. Like, this one was exactly what I've been feeling, and it had this great moment. So I would say, not only does this have Daniel Henney, which is enough for us, but this was a great movie, and frankly, I think if you're coming to Korea or you're coming to Asia, like, a movie like this is really good because you can sort of sense that, like, culture shock, but there's also, like, there's that way overwhelming feeling that the culture and the people are more embracing you than not. So I really, really enjoyed this movie, and I hope you guys watch it. I have to say, the only place I know where you can watch it right now is iTunes. You can definitely rent it on iTunes, or if you live in the U.S., you could definitely buy it, probably Target or something like that. I'm sure they'll have it. So yeah, definitely check those things out and watch this. It was really great. Okay, check my other videos out. Bye, guys.